Ebony was known in her village as the woman who carried her children in her eyes wherever she went. Even when her hands were empty, her heart was full of plans for them. Poverty pressed on her life like a heavy stone, but hope lived stubbornly inside her. Each morning, she watched her children sleep on woven mats, their breaths rising and falling like gentle waves, and she promised them a future she herself had never touched. When she decided to leave, it was not because she loved them less. It was because love demanded distance. On the day she departed, the sun hung low, and her shadow stretched long behind her, as if refusing to follow. She knelt, pressed her lips to her children's foreheads, and whispered, "This road is hard, but it leads back to you." As the bus pulled away, dust swallowed her feet, and her shadow remained behind, clinging to the red earth. The city she left behind was a place of many faces. Old women sold groundnuts beside glass buildings that reflected the sky like mirrors. Buses roared past donkey carts. The smell of fried plantain mixed with car smoke. Children ran between cars, palms outstretched, while men in suits walked quickly, eyes fixed ahead. Tradition and modern life stood shoulder to shoulder, neither willing to move aside. Markets buzzed with voices calling out prices and prayers. Horns blared. Radios played old songs beneath new towers. The city promised progress, but it also hid hunger in its shadows. To Ebony, it was both a mother and a thief, offering dreams while quietly stealing innocence. Far away, across water and strange tongues, Ebony learned the weight of loneliness. She scrubbed floors that were not hers and carried loads that bent her back. People spoke around her, not to her. Some looked through her as if she were air. At night, when her hands ached and her body begged for rest, she lay awake, staring at ceilings that felt colder than stone. Sometimes tears came without sound. She wiped them quickly, ashamed of weakness. "I did not come here to cry," she told herself. "I came here to build." Each insult swallowed, each hunger endured, became another brick in the future she imagined for her children. Her dignity was tested, but it did not break. She folded her pain into strength and sent it home as money. Every month, she sent what she earned back to the village. Each transfer carried more than currency. It carried trust. It carried belief. She imagined school uniforms, full plates, exercise books filled with careful writing. She told herself, "Blood will protect blood." When she spoke on the phone, she asked, "Are the children well?" And the answers came quickly, too smoothly. "They are fine," she was told. "They are growing." She believed it, because belief was easier than doubt. To her, money was not just survival. It was safety, education, and love folded into small numbers on a screen. In her heart lived the teachings of her people. Family was sacred. Elders were shields. A child under the roof of kin was under the eye of the ancestors. Tradition wrapped her fears in comfort, whispering that nothing could go wrong where custom stood guard. When doubts tried to rise, she pushed them down. "My people know what is right," she said. "My children are safe among their own." She did not know that respect can sometimes hide cruelty, and silence can wear the face of tradition. Far away, she slept believing her children were protected, while betrayal quietly learned her name. Songs floated through the bus as it rolled toward the city, soft and hopeful, the kind sung by travelers who believe tomorrow will smile at them. Ebony sat upright, her back straight with pride, her heart beating fast with joy. She held a small bag close to her chest, filled with gifts, dreams, and plans. In her mind, she already saw her children running toward her, laughing, taller than before, clean and confident. "I am home," she whispered, smiling to herself. "We will begin again." She imagined school gates opening, books under her children's arms, a home repaired with fresh paint and laughter. Every sacrifice suddenly felt worth it. The road ahead seemed wide and welcoming. When she stepped down into the street, the city greeted her with noise and movement. Music played from shops. Traders shouted greetings. Hope rose inside her like a drumbeat. Then, as she walked forward, her steps slowed. By the roadside, children sat on the bare ground. Their clothes were torn. Dust clung to their skin. Small hands stretched out, shaking tins with weak sounds. Their eyes were old, too old for their faces. Hunger lived openly on their bones. Ebony's heart tightened. She looked away at first, telling herself not to stare. Then one voice rose, thin and familiar. She turned back slowly. Her breath caught the shape of a face, the curve of an eyebrow, a scar she knew. "No," she whispered. "It cannot be." Her bag slipped from her hand. The world around her faded. The horns, the voices, the music, all fell silent. She stepped closer, her legs shaking. The child looked up, fear flashing across his face, followed by confusion. "Please," he said softly, lowering his eyes. "I will go." Ebony fell to her knees. "My child," she said, her voice breaking. "Look at me." The child hesitated, then looked again. His eyes widened. His lips trembled. "Mama," he whispered, unsure, as if hope itself might punish him. Ebony gathered him into her arms, then reached for the others. They stiffened at her touch, bodies trained to expect pain. One flinched. Another tried to pull away. "It is me," she cried. "I am here. I am here." Slowly, trembling hands touched her face, as if checking whether she was real. Tears came, heavy and hot. The street watched as a mother pulled her children from the ground, holding them against her chest like lost pieces of her own soul. She looked at their thin arms, their fearful eyes, and her heart screamed questions her mouth could not yet ask. The city kept moving, uncaring, while Ebony stood still, holding her children, standing at the edge of a truth she was not ready to face. Ebony did not need words to understand what her children had endured. Their bodies spoke first. Arms too thin for their age. Feet cracked and swollen from long days on hot roads. Their eyes carried weight, the kind children should never know. When she tried to wash the dust from their skin, they flinched, shrinking away as if water itself could hurt them. "Easy," she whispered. "Mama is here." They nodded quickly, too quickly, obedience shaped by fear. Hunger followed them like a shadow. Even after eating, they held food tightly, hiding small pieces in their palms. One child asked softly, "Will there be more later?" Ebony turned away so they would not see her tears. When she led them back to the family compound, her heart broke again. This was the place where laughter once spilled into the night, where stories were told by firelight. Now the walls were cracked, the roof sagged, and weeds pushed through the yard like uninvited guests. The door creaked as if tired of opening. Inside, rooms stood empty, stripped of warmth. "This was our home," Ebony said, more to herself than to them. The children stood close together, eyes lowered. One whispered, "We sleep outside sometimes. Inside is not for us." The house said nothing, but it remembered everything. It had watched love leave and cruelty move in. It had heard cries swallowed by night. Its silence felt heavy, like guilt. Later, when the caretaker arrived, greetings followed him like praise. People nodded respectfully. "You have done well," a neighbor said. "You kept the children." Ebony studied him closely. His clothes were clean. His voice calm. His name carried honor. Yet when he looked at the children, something hard flickered in his eyes. "They are stubborn," he said. "I tried my best." Ebony's jaw tightened. "Is this your best?" she asked quietly. He smiled thinly. "Children exaggerate." That night, Ebony searched for answers. School books were missing. Fees unpaid. She counted the months, the money sent, the promises made. The numbers did not add up. Meals skipped. Clothes never bought. She asked gently at first, then firmly. "The money?" she asked. "It was not enough," he replied quickly. "Times are hard." But Ebony had lived hard times. She knew hunger's true face. The truth crept in slowly, like dawn revealing ruins. Coins had crossed oceans but never reached small hands. The children told their story in pieces. A push here. A slap there. Long days of carrying loads, selling goods, begging when work ran out. School became a dream spoken of in whispers. Fear was the law of the house. "If we talked," one child said softly, "we were beaten." Outside, neighbors passed by. They had seen the children thin and dirty. They had heard crying at night. But they looked away. One woman said later, "It was not my place." Another murmured, "Family matters bring trouble." Silence spread like a sickness. Ebony stood in the yard one evening, watching the sun fall behind broken walls. She understood then that betrayal does not always come with noise. Sometimes it wears respect. Sometimes it hides behind tradition. And sometimes it survives because too many people choose peace over truth. She pulled her children close. "No more," she said. "Your suffering ends here." The night listened. And somewhere beyond the compound, truth began to stir, ready to demand its voice. Ebony stood at the edge of the circular gathering, the heat of the afternoon sun pressing down on the elders seated before her. Their faces were calm, smooth with age, lined with authority. They had guided generations. Their words once carried the weight of ancestors. Today she came seeking truth, and yet, already, the air felt heavy with avoidance. "Elders," she began, voice firm but trembling, "my children suffer. I have returned to find them broken. I need your counsel, your justice." A murmur spread through the circle. One elder adjusted his robe, a gesture that spoke of habit, comfort, and centuries of habit. "Child," he said gently, "family matters are delicate. Patience is the path of wisdom. Let forgiveness lead, not anger." "But my children," Ebony's words cracked under the weight of memory. "They have been starved, beaten, denied learning, and left to fear every day of their lives. Should tradition protect the guilty?" The elders' faces remained composed. "Fate moves in ways the eyes cannot always see," another said. "Perhaps the ancestors will judge. Perhaps the wrongdoing was meant to teach endurance and humility. Let the family reconcile. Do not force discord where the blood binds." Ebony's chest heaved. Rage and sorrow churned like storms within her. She bowed her head, but the fire of her mother's heart refused to be silent. Around the courtyard, neighbors watched quietly, some smiling politely, some hiding envy behind polite words. She had seen it before, the subtle twist of jealousy. Relatives who nodded in greeting, yet their eyes flashed with resentment. Her years abroad, the money she had sent, the effort she had made, they were marks of her success that pricked at their own inadequacy. That very envy had turned love into cruelty, respect into neglect. The wealth of experience had become a curse in the eyes of those who should have protected her children. Her mind fought a constant battle. The teachings of her people whispered respect for elders, for tradition, for patience. Yet another voice, fiercer and louder, rose from within. Protect the children. Demand truth. Confront wrongdoing. She closed her eyes, trying to reconcile these voices, trying to remember the lessons of restraint, of humility. But each glance at her children, their silent fear, their trembling hands, rekindled the fire of maternal instinct. Rage and reverence collided. Her body trembled. The air seemed to thicken with moral tension, as if the spirits themselves were watching, waiting for her choice. One elder leaned forward, voice soft. "Your children are precious, yes, but the family, the lineage, the ancestors, they must be preserved. Forgive. Do not let anger break what time has built." Ebony's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to honor them, to bow to wisdom centuries old, but the knowledge of what had been done, the weight of betrayal, would not allow her to bend. She straightened her back and spoke, voice low but unwavering. "Respect is earned, not blind. Justice is not silence. Today, the blood of my children demands more than words. It demands truth." A hush fell over the circle. Some elders shifted uneasily. Some faces betrayed the first glimmer of doubt. Outside, the village seemed to hold its breath, the wind stirring the dust as if carrying the voices of ancestors, asking, "Who will stand for the innocent when tradition shields the guilty?" One elder finally broke the silence. "Child, the path you choose is sharp and lonely, but perhaps it is the path your heart knows is right." Ebony nodded, feeling the weight of her decision. The fire inside her burned brighter, unbowed by age, custom, or fear. Today, she would step between the past and the present, between comfort and justice, guided by nothing but the love she carried in her chest. The circle remained still. Outside, the city murmured, the wind whispered, and somewhere far above, the ancestors listened. Ebony felt the weight of the village pressing down on her, heavier than any burden she had carried abroad. Whispers followed her every step, polite greetings laced with hidden judgment. "She has returned," they said. We must honor the family. Honor. The word was repeated like a drumbeat, but to Ebony it sounded hollow. It demanded she swallow grief, ignore her children's suffering, and protect the reputation of those who had betrayed her. They will not speak against us, one elder murmured, eyes sliding toward her. The family's name is sacred. Her chest tightened. Sacred? She asked quietly. And my children? Are their lives not sacred too? The village elders shook their heads gently. Tradition, they insisted, was older and wiser than rage. Shame, they reminded her, was the weapon that kept families whole. But the shame felt like chains around her heart, and she could not silence the screams of injustice. Beyond the compound, the world outside the village offered a different kind of justice. Laws written in stone and paper, officers who could intervene, children's services that could protect. But they were distant, cold, and slow. Ebony had tried to call once, only to be told, "We cannot move without evidence." Evidence. Her children bore it in their bodies, in the tremble of their hands, in eyes that had aged far beyond their years. Yet here she stood alone, suspended between two worlds, one ruled by ancient customs, the other by distant rules she could not yet reach. At night, she would sit on the cracked veranda, children clinging to her skirts. She felt the fire of instinct rise within her, demanding obedience to no one but love itself. Respect for elders, for tradition, for lineage, these values, so long taught, now collided violently with her need to protect her children. Rage burned behind her eyes, but she bowed, whispering lessons of patience even as the flames in her chest grew. Her children would not enter the house she once called home. They pressed close to her, refusing the cracked floors and dusty rooms. "Inside is not for us," one whispered, and the words cut deeper than any slap or insult she had endured abroad. What had once been sanctuary now radiated terror. The roof that sheltered them in innocence had become a monument to betrayal. Their fear was undeniable proof of what she already knew. Her trust had been stolen. She walked past the ancestral shrine, once a place of reverence and light, now covered in dust and silence. Broken prayer beads lay on the floor, cobwebs brushing against stone, and the smell of neglect hung in the air. The spirits who were supposed to guide, to protect, seemed absent, and the moral decay of the house mirrored the decay of the community's conscience. When she confronted the caretaker, his voice was calm, almost smooth. "I have done what is right," he said. "I protected the children in the way our family always has. Tradition demands it." Ebony's hands shook. "Protected," she spat, voice rising. "You call abuse and neglect protection? How many nights did they cry while you smiled?" The elders looked down, murmuring of respect and lineage. Familiarity and admiration had shielded the betrayer, and they clung to it, manipulating custom to bury the truth even deeper. Lies were spoken with the voice of culture itself, and for a moment the world seemed still, truth hidden beneath the weight of centuries of obedience. Ebony took a deep breath. Her chest rose and fell, trembling, as silence began to crack. The fire inside her pressed against the walls of patience, threatening to burst. She could feel the first tremors of confrontation, a mother refusing to be quiet, refusing to bow to falsehoods and the suffocating weight of tradition. Today, she thought, she would no longer wait. Today, her children's pain would have a voice. The village square filled slowly as the sun hovered low, casting long shadows across dusty stones. Elders in flowing robes, family heads with walking sticks carved with symbols of authority, and neighbors whose eyes carried a lifetime of whispers gathered in silence. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. The air was thick, heavy with expectation, as if the earth itself awaited the truth. Children clutched Ebony's skirts, sensing the gravity she could barely name herself. No one spoke, no one dared. The betrayer sat among the respected figures, shoulders straight, chin lifted, smiling politely. Status, power, and reputation draped him like fine cloth, yet behind the smile flickered unease. Eyes that had once bowed to him now searched for cracks, and whispers of doubt buzzed like hidden bees in the silent crowd. Truth waited beneath the politeness, patient and relentless. Ebony stepped forward. Her gaze fell on her children. Scars etched their skin, bruises darkened the fragile flesh, and eyes carried memories of nights spent shivering in fear. Witnesses began to speak, neighbors who had once looked away, records of unpaid school fees, and merchants who had sold bread and clothes that never reached the little hands waiting at home. The pain was undeniable, and every silent gasp in the crowd became a chorus of evidence too loud to ignore. The betrayer's words faltered. "I know it was." His confident tone stumbled, unraveling like a poorly woven cloth. Contradictions revealed themselves, one after another. Promises twisted into lies. Familiar respect slipped into suspicion. Murmurs rose from the crowd, replacing polite nods with questioning stares. Authority that had been assumed by status alone began to crumble under the weight of truth. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Clouds rolled in with unusual speed, and the wind stirred dust into swirling eddies around the square. A sharp clap of thunder split the air, and the crowd instinctively bowed, hands raised, murmuring prayers. It was as if the ancestors themselves had risen to witness the gathering. Eyes widened in fear and belief. Even the most skeptical felt the weight of judgment pressing down, echoing in the flutter of their hearts. Ebony lifted her voice, clear and unwavering. "Enough," she said. "I will not let silence hide what has been done. I will not let tradition shield cruelty. These are my children." She knelt beside them, brushing the dust from their faces. "I choose you over fear. I choose truth over the false peace of comfort. No custom, no elder, no cloak of respect will make me bow to lies." The elders shifted uneasily, some leaning forward in shock, others whispering among themselves. The square seemed to pulse with new energy, a rhythm set by courage, maternal love, and the refusal to ignore injustice. For the first time, the authority of tradition was challenged openly, reshaped not by age or status but by the heart of a mother who refused to remain silent. Around her, the village felt it. Power could be questioned, lies could be unmasked, and the innocence of children demanded protection over the comfort of appearances. Ebony's children clung to her, no longer shadows, but living proof that courage could bend the weight of history, that one voice, if brave enough, could awaken an entire community to justice. The elders' eyes, once steady and commanding, now flickered with unease. They had sat for generations as the guardians of law, tradition, and family honor, yet here they were confronted with a truth they could no longer bend or ignore. Ebony's voice rang in their ears, each word a hammer striking the walls of comfort they had built around themselves. "You saw my children suffer. You heard their cries. And you said nothing. How can tradition guide when it shields cruelty?" For the first time, authority wavered. The circle of elders, proud and imposing, lowered their heads, the weight of their silence pressing upon them like a heavy stone. Whispers spread through the crowd. Respect alone could not mask failure. Wisdom alone could not excuse inaction. The moral reckoning had begun. The betrayer, once cloaked in respectability, now trembled. Sweat ran down his temples as eyes that had once bowed now stared with accusation. I did what I thought was right," he stammered, but the words fell flat. The ledger of broken promises, bruises, and missed opportunities loomed larger than any excuse. Fear, guilt, and exposure consumed him. His posture collapsed, pride dissolving into disgrace before the eyes of the village he had relied upon for cover. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mothers pressed hands to mouths. Fathers shifted uneasily. Long-held customs, once unquestioned, trembled under the weight of truth. Conversations that had been whispered behind closed doors now echoed openly. Could honor exist if it hid harm? Could respect survive when it shielded injustice? The community felt itself awaken, startled and unsteady, as the quiet power of truth spread like wind through the gathering. Consequences arrived with neither fanfare nor cheer. Legal authorities took statements. Social censure fell upon the betrayer. Spiritual rituals were performed to cleanse the stain on the household. Respect once granted by birthright and appearance transformed into accountability. Justice had arrived, silent but undeniable, and the village felt the shift. The elders lowered their heads fully now, voices soft with shame. "We failed," one whispered. "We hid behind what we called tradition, and in doing so, we betrayed those we swore to protect." Humility replaced arrogance. Wisdom regained its true purpose, not the protection of power, but the safeguarding of the innocent. Ebony turned toward her children. The scars on their small bodies, the wary glances, the quiet tremors, they were proof of what had been lost, but also of what could be rebuilt. She held them close, speaking softly, teaching them that dignity could be restored, that learning could bloom even in places of pain. Step by step, she guided them from fear to hope, from survival to growth. Motherhood became more than care. It became the force that rebuilt a family, redefined a community, and reminded all who watched that love, courage, and truth could restore what betrayal had broken. The village lingered in the quiet that followed truth. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Fathers exchanged glances that no longer carried shame but awareness. "We cannot look away again," an elder murmured, voice thick with regret. "We have learned what silence has cost." Conversations that had once been whispered in fear now flowed openly. Neighbors promised to watch over one another's children, to speak when injustice surfaced, to protect rather than judge. The community, shaken awake by betrayal, embraced a new resolve. Fear no longer ruled them. Shared responsibility became their shield, and the vulnerable were no longer alone. Ebony walked slowly through the family compound, hands tracing the repaired walls, each stone replaced with care. Where once cracks had mirrored broken trust, now the walls stood firm, a symbol of healing. In the courtyard, she planted a tree whose roots dug deep into the earth, promising growth and renewal. The children helped her, little hands patting soil around the young trunk. "This tree will grow as we grow," Ebony said softly, her voice steady. "It will remind us that we can rebuild what was lost, together." She turned to face the betrayer, now humbled, standing with bowed head. "I forgive," she said, her words deliberate, carrying strength. "Not because what happened is forgotten, but because mercy can be the shield that protects our hearts from bitterness." The community watched, understanding that forgiveness was not weakness, but a power that balanced justice with compassion. Her children, once shadows of fear, now looked toward the horizon. Laughter returned in quiet bursts, voices spoke their own thoughts freely, and eyes shone with the curiosity of dreams unafraid. Schoolbooks replaced the instruments of labor, and the walls of the home echoed with learning and play instead of fear. They began to imagine a life that stretched beyond survival, one where possibility outweighed despair. In the evening, Ebony gathered the village children beneath the shade of the new tree. She spoke softly, her words carrying the wisdom of generations. Tradition must protect, not hide. Family is not entitlement, it is responsibility. And a mother's love can bend what seems like fate itself. The elders nodded, humbled. They saw that true authority came not from silence or fear, but from courage, compassion, and the courage to speak when injustice threatens. The village listened, and the lesson rooted itself, like the tree, ready for the next generation. And so, the home was mended, the tree planted, and the children learned to dream. Justice had found its voice, mercy had its place, and the wisdom of the past became a guide for the future. The sun set gently over the village, casting golden light on walls repaired and hearts awakened. Life, once fractured, began to grow anew.